Actually, in the last lecture, I kind of ended being cut off, and I was mentioning I was going to show you this one video I'm actually going to show next, not right now. Um, so, I was covering essentially what got us up to Hitler reasserting Germany, okay, and defying the Versailles Treaty and the capitulation um, by other Western nations. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Soviet Union in a second. But, okay, so William Chamberlain in particular. So France and Britain make an appeasement to the Germans, which we all now know in retrospect was a bad idea. But I'm really glad that now historians are taking this approach more about reevaluating this. Because as much as I think that Chamberlain's decision was also not a good one, there's these factors that need to be considered. And, to this day, when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, senators and other political talking heads say, "Oh, if we don't invade, look what happened. Hitler. They go to this Hitler thing, and if you're a president and you say, I don't want to get involved, oh, you're a Chamberlain. You're a Chamberlain. Yeah. We all know what happened when, the British and the French turned and looked the other way and allowed for this steamrolling into aggression. Saddam's going to invade and annex Kuwait, and then it'll be Saudi Arabia, and then it'll be Turkey, and then it'll be the United States, right? He's just going to take over the world. So this is this kind of formula. You'll notice this, watch, from now on. Every time a nation invades and the bigger powers don't intervene militarily to stop it, they're basically considered a Chamberlain, and this moment gets invoked. Well, okay, there's something there to be thought about at the very least. But, let's think about this. World War I just happened, essentially. It was very recent. And there were other skirmishes going on and other war, other aspects, which I'm going to cover in a second. That meant that, you had a lot of people who not long ago already were in the middle of massive war. And so now we're going to just go right back to war over a smaller neighbor. And after all, it seemed like he was just, kind of solidifying German territories. That would have been an extreme decision. You realize if Britain and France would have actually went to war with the Germans here, and we don't know how that would have turned out, that would have, other nations would have perhaps seen them as being just as aggressive as Germany. It's not like a World War II couldn't have happened anyways. And then Chamberlain would have always been accused as the guy who was a big diplomatic failure and who overreached too fast into going back into a war that, the rest of Europe was not ready for. So I think, it's the case here that Obama faces as president with Syria, but not just Obama. It's going to be, I'd say, the American political establishment. This terrible war that's continued, the civil war there is really leading the creating of ISIS and ISIL, just as much as the U.S. invasion of Iraq. Historians are going to pretty much agree upon those two things, I think, regardless of how that really feels. that seems to be the case. But would U.S. intervention in the civil war of Syria really make it better? I don't think that's really clear cut. Letting it continue, is it making it better? That's not working either. Oh man, sometimes these decisions in these kind of situations are really complicated. and they all have potential for dire consequences. Okay, and so what I'm just saying is, I think it's fair to like understand that sometimes when it comes to decisions like this and moments like this, that any decision can be terrible. And I think that this show always reminds us that maybe what needs to be thought about is not letting the world get to a point where these are the only set of options we have, right? Okay. In any case, there is that understanding now, and even then, one of the things that's pointed out in the textbook, that during the 1920s, many scholars were studying the records and realizing that, they were kind of feeling bad about the way Germany was being treated also. And, Germany, making some allowances for Germany to break the Treaty of Versailles seemed to be maybe like the polite thing to do, so there was that kind of sense of disproportionate punishment, even if it was at the expense of, Czechoslovakia. Okay. And then one of the things that should be really, really, really hammered into the discussion was this overall fear of communism. As we talked about how communism was a response to capitalism, and it wanted violent revolution and to create a totally socialized economy. Now think about this. All these business owners in these industrialized centers that were wanting to exploit workers, or at the very least make their profits, have a political ideology that basically says that they're evil and that they need to be removed, and that workers can actually control the means of production without them. Okay? It's kind of like why the American insurance industry would do all it can to put money into campaigning anything that would be like socialized medicine in the United States, and or even against Obamacare, forcing them to do things. It's not in their economic interest. If we had socialized medicine in the United States, the entire insurance industry would actually have to disappear. Think about that for a second. So it would make sense that it's not in the interest of the American medical insurance industry to let there be any sympathy towards socialized medicine, whether it's better for the country or not. Okay, for all private businesses, communism is a threat, not because of it being totalitarian, not because of it advocating atheism, not because of it not allowing for extreme individualism. It's because it actually calls for their eradication. Okay, and it makes sense that this fear, for the Soviet Union to actually take Karl Marx and implement it into reality, and for the Soviets to take over the means of production and control them, sent shockwaves through the capitalist industrial world. We cannot underestimate that. And again, I want to say, not because of human rights atrocities and the evils of communism, but because of the very fact that it was at all there. Okay? And it sent a boost to radicals around the world, that there really was a possible life without capitalists. Okay? You could overthrow your bosses, man. It could really happen. Woo! That's a serious, threat. The Communist Manifesto was right. There is a specter haunting Europe, and the specter of communism, and here it came. Okay? And so fascists, Mussolini and Hitler, were major anti-communists. And that was something that the West actually liked. Okay? No matter what they were doing to communists, and even some of the more mainstream socialists, and by the way, Mussolini started off as a socialist, but he eventually went the other way. That's going to be seen as a great thing. And this fear of the Soviet Union, and then the Soviet Union's appeasement, the way to work with the Nazis, also has to do with the fact that Russia was invaded at the end of World War I, even by the United States, to try to crush the communist revolution. I didn't get a chance to talk about that in the last covering. And this is an important, I think, deliberately covered part of history that just gets ignored. And I'm glad I have an opportunity to share this with you, because it really puts the Cold War in context and the way that the Russians feel about the West, the rest of the West. You know, there's, may I be blunt, really stupid movies that came out in the Cold War about the Russians invading us, the scariness of the, and I still see things on YouTubes and people, oh, you know, would the Russians invade us? And my own dear daughter, you know, she saw the thing with Putin and the kids are saying, you know, they're all worried, and she says, Dad, you know, could the Russians invade us? Now, I think for high school students, you can't blame them for taking that position. And, you know, and why I'm saying that the movies were stupid is because, well, stupid is not the right word. It's just the chances of Russia invading us are very, very slim, and China, and not in their interest, and logistically, I think, just not possible. And I've never met any serious military strategist who ever thought so. But what we do know is that we've actually invaded the Russians. Okay? And even our own presidents and politicians have forgot that, or did not know that, such as Reagan, which you'll see in this clip. So I found this person who does this interesting analysis, which is pretty spot on YouTube, and I'm going to let you watch that and put this in the context of everything that we're talking about, and then I'm going to move on with a continuation of the war. But once you actually learn this history, the short little clip I'm going to show you next, you are going to be more aware of this context than the good majority of people in America. Okay, so here we go, and then I'll move to the next lecture.